the high-stakes world of televised talent competitions, is often viewed as the ultimate gatekeeper, a man whose single nod can launch a global career and whose rejection can end one. But in 2012, a shy teenager in a baggy hoodie did the unthinkable. He looked the industry mogul in the eye and said no to a guaranteed path to superstardom. The narrative of reality television is frequently built on the idea of total submission to the experts behind the judging table. Contestants are expected to be grateful for any crumbs of advice, especially when that advice comes from the man responsible for the success of One Direction and Lewis. However, the 2012 season of Britain's Got Talent provided a rare moment of genuine, unscripted defiance that shattered the industry's standard operating procedure. When Jonathan walked onto the stage, he was immediately categorized as an underdog, a visual mismatch for the polished pop world. But the story that unfolded wasn't just about a surprising voice. It was about a psychological standoff between an industry titan used to absolute control and a young man who refused to sell his soul for a record deal. This investigative report explores the specific moment Jonathan the Machine, the dark history he was escaping, and the decade-long transformation that eventually proved he was right all along. We will dive deep into the specific ultimatum that shocked the nation, and why, in the world of manufactured fame, Jonathan's refusal to follow the script remains one of the most significant moments in broadcast history. To truly understand why Jonathan was so defensive on that stage, we must first examine the investigative reports regarding his life before the cameras rolled, a history of systematic mistreatment within the school system that nearly silenced his voice forever. Before he was a household name, Jonathan was a student at West Hatch High School where he became the primary target of severe and relentless bullying. Sources close to the singer have confirmed that this wasn't merely schoolyard teasing. It was a sustained campaign of psychological harassment focused on his weight and appearance. The intensity of this treatment reportedly led to a complete breakdown in his confidence, forcing him to withdraw from the school system entirely to protect his mental well-being. Jonathan has since gone on record in various interviews describing this period as inhabiting the darkest of places. While we must adhere to broadcast standards and avoid direct terms for sensitive topics, it is important to note that Jonathan was battling severe internal demons that brought him to the brink of a permanent and tragic decision. The psychological toll was so immense that, for a significant period, he refused to leave his home, finding solace only in the music he practiced in his bedroom. This context is critical because it highlights that when he eventually walked onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, he wasn't just battling nerves. He was fighting against years of conditioning that told him he was worthless. The courage required to stand before a judging panel, after years of being told he didn't belong, adds a layer of gravity to his performance that the casual viewer likely missed during the initial broadcast. He was a survivor using music as his only tether to a world that had tried to erase him. The footage from the 2012 audition serves as a perfect case study in unconscious bias, as the cameras captured the exact moment the audience and judges decided Jonathan's fate before he had even lifted the microphone. Reviewing the archival tape of the audition, the prejudice in the room is palpable and documented. As Jonathan walked onto the stage alongside his singing partner, Charlotte, the visual contrast to the standard industry hopeful was stark. Clad in a baggy t-shirt and loose sweatpants, Jonathan did not fit the aesthetic mold of a classical crossover artist. The camera cuts reveal the judge's immediate skepticism, is seen leaning back with a distinct look of resignation, while audience members are captured exchanging judgmental glances and snickers. This was a setup for humiliation, a moment designed to mock the underdog for the sake of entertainment. However, the narrative shifted instantaneously once the backing track for The Prayer began. Audio analysis of the performance confirms that Jonathan's vocal control and tenor range were not just good for an amateur. They were technically proficient at a professional level, possessing a richness usually developed over decades of conservatory training. The transformation in the room was physical. The collective mockery evaporated, replaced by a stunned silence that eventually erupted into a standing ovation. But the most critical aspect of this segment wasn't the singing. It was the immediate aftermath. While the audience was cheering for the performance, his mind was reportedly already spinning with business calculations. He wasn't just hearing a voice. He was seeing a discrepancy between the two performers that he believed needed to be corrected for market viability. What happened next was a classic display of industry ruthlessness, as attempted to execute a maneuver that would have destroyed a friendship to manufacture a solo superstar. Following the performance, the feedback took a sharp and unexpected turn. While the other judges offered praise, focused on what he perceived as the weak link. In a move that industry insiders describe as typical for high-stakes talent management, publicly proposed that Jonathan ditch Charlotte. His exact words were, "Jonathan, you are a huge star," followed by the suggestion that Charlotte would only hold him back. We have to analyze the weight of this proposition. This was not a private meeting. This was a televised ultimatum from the most influential man in the music business, delivered to a fragile 17-year-old boy. The proposition was clear. Betray your friend and partner and I will give you the keys to the kingdom. From a business perspective, was looking at the bottom line. Solo acts are often easier to market and manage than duos, especially when there is a perceived skill gap. Was essentially handing Jonathan a winning lottery ticket. But the cost of redemption was his integrity. Most contestants in the history of the franchise would have accepted this offer without hesitation, driven by the desperation for fame and the fear of upsetting a powerful mogul. The tension in the theater was undeniable, as the audience waited to see if the boy who had been bullied his whole life would become the bully to save his own career. It was a test of character that went far beyond vocal ability, representing the age-old conflict between artistic loyalty and corporate greed. In a twist that every rule of reality television, Jonathan's response to the industry titan wasn't submission. It was a defiant defense of loyalty that forced a public retraction from himself. Jonathan's reaction to the ultimatum remains one of the defining moments of the show's history. Without consulting his parents or pausing for dramatic effect, he immediately rejected the premise of his offer. His statement, "We came here as a duo, we're gonna stay here as a duo," was delivered with a firmness that contradicted his shy demeanor. This was a critical juncture. By refusing to abandon Charlotte, Jonathan signaled that his personal values outweighed commercial success. This decision could have cost him his spot in the competition, a risk few would ever take, yet it had the opposite effect. It endeared him to the British public, who saw a level of integrity rarely displayed on such programs. The narrative arc reached a climax in the semi-finals, where the duo performed again with even greater precision. The chemistry and improvement were so undeniable that was forced to issue a rare on-air apology. He admitted, "I have to apologize to you." Sticking with Charlotte was the best decision you could have made. This moment of vindication is significant because it proved that an artist could succeed on their own terms. Jonathan had forced the industry to bend to him, rather than bending to the industry. He proved that the expert opinion isn't always the right one, especially when it ignores the human element that makes art resonant. Despite the victory of loyalty in 2012, critics resurfaced 2 years later when the duo announced their separation, claiming this was proof that had been right all along. But a closer look at the facts reveals a different story. In 2014, the news broke that Jonathan and Charlotte were officially parting ways to pursue solo careers. This announcement immediately triggered a wave of "I told you so" commentary from industry skeptics who believed the split validated its initial assessment that Jonathan should have gone solo from day one. However, investigative context is required here. The split was not acrimonious, nor was it a result of failure. The duo had already released 2 highly successful albums, Together and Perhaps Love, both of which achieved gold certification. They had toured the world and secured their financial futures. The decision to split was reported as mutual and amicable, stemming from a desire to explore different creative directions. Jonathan toured classical opera and Charlotte toured musical theater, rather than a lack of success. Music, the label managing them, recognized that both artists had matured enough to stand alone. This distinction is crucial. Wanted to split them up before they had even started, which would have been a ruthless business cut. Jonathan waited until they had achieved success together, ensuring that Charlotte also had a platform and a career before they moved on. Therefore, the split did not prove right. It proved that Jonathan's timing was superior. He navigated the industry with a moral compass that ensured both parties were protected, a rare feat in the shark-infested waters of the music business. While the tabloids focused on his music and his weight, Jonathan was privately grappling with a neurological reality that went undiagnosed for decades, finally coming to light in 2022. For years, media outlets and fans speculated about Jonathan's unique mannerisms, his intense privacy, and the visible discomfort he sometimes displayed during interviews and red carpet events. It wasn't until 2022, at the age of 27, that Jonathan publicly revealed he had received a formal diagnosis of autism. In a candid update to his followers, he described this diagnosis not as a burden, but as a profound relief, a moment that recontextualized his entire life experience. This revelation provided a new lens through which to view his 2012 audition. The sensory overload of the loud audience, the bright studio lights, and the intense scrutiny of the judges would have been exponentially more difficult for someone on the spectrum. It also explains his deep attachment to Charlotte. She wasn't just a singing partner, she was a safe person who helped ground him in a chaotic environment. The diagnosis highlighted that his refusal to split from her was likely a necessary coping mechanism as much as a moral stance. Understanding this neurodivergence adds a layer of heroism to his journey. He was navigating a high-stimulus industry that is notoriously unfriendly to neurodivergent individuals, all while undiagnosed and without the proper support tools. It reveals that his defiance was actually a form of self-preservation. This new understanding of himself coincided with another massive lifestyle overhaul that would leave him virtually unrecognizable to his original. Recent footage of the tenor reveals a physical metamorphosis so drastic that it has dominated headlines, signaling that Jonathan has finally taken full control of his health and his future. If you were to look at a side-by-side comparison of Jonathan from 2012 and the man performing today, you would be forgiven for thinking they were two different people. Reports confirm that in recent years, Jonathan has committed to a rigorous health regime that has resulted in the loss of approximately 5 stone, or 70. Unlike many celebrity transformations driven by vanity or surgery, Jonathan has been vocal that this change was driven by discipline and mental health management. He credits walking 10,000 steps a day and a complete overhaul of his diet as the key factors. This physical glow-up is symbolic of his internal shift. He has moved from the broken teenager who felt he had no future to a chart-topping solo artist who commands the stage with confidence. Currently, Jonathan is a force in the classical crossover genre, regularly hitting the #1 spot on the charts and recording at prestigious locations like Abbey Road Studios. He toured globally, not as a reality TV novelty, but as a respected tenor with a loyal international following. His journey from a bullied student in a hoodie to a health-conscious, self-aware superstar serves as the ultimate rebuttal to the early judgments placed upon him by the industry. He didn't just survive the spotlight, he mastered it on his own terms, proving that a no to the wrong path is often the fastest way to the right one. Ultimately, the story of Jonathan is not just about a voice that surprised the world, but about the triumph of human integrity over corporate ruthlessness. Jonathan didn't just win a spot in a talent show. He won a moral victory that is still discussed over a decade later. He demonstrated that it is possible to navigate the cutthroat waters of the music industry without sacrificing one's character. Looked at a book cover and saw a risk. The world opened the book and found a hero. And considering Jonathan is now living his best life, healthy, successful, and surrounded by that respects him for the person he is, it is safe to report that in the long game of life, he won that argument forever. His story serves as a permanent reminder to the industry that talent is universal, but character is what creates a legend. As he continues to fill concert halls around the world, the echoes of that 2012 refusal still ring out as a testament to the power of staying true to oneself, no matter how much pressure is applied by those in power.